Hello and welcome to the DSP Leaders World Forum 2021. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV, and coming up now is our Challenges and Opportunities Roundtable, where we'll be discussing how DSPs can accelerate speed to market for new services. Digital services promise to open up new revenue streams for telcos, expanding beyond their connectivity strengths. Now, whilst telcos already offer various digital services, to varying degrees and with varying success, it must be said, only a few can truly claim to be digital services providers. So how do they accelerate their efforts, identify the most appropriate services and speed up the time it takes them to get into the market? Well, let's find out what our guests think, and I am delighted to introduce Neil McRae, MD Architecture and Technology Strategy and Chief Architect, BT Group. Bejoy Pankajakshan, EVP and Chief Strategy Officer for Mavenir. Tim Smith, VP of Nokia Europe. Susan White, Head of Strategy and Portfolio Marketing at Netcracker. Rolf Eberhardt, who is Head of Orchestration, Communications and Media Solutions, HPE. And Graham Wilde, Head of 5G Business Development for CK Hutchison Innovation Opportunities and Development. Hello everyone, good to see you all. Thank you for taking part in the round table. We've got another full house today, which just goes to show how important this topic is. Now, Ray and I have put together some discussion points based on input from our TelecomTV viewers. So let's get straight to the first point, and that is telcos have outdated ideas of where the best digital services are. They should stop thinking about big plays such as TV, gaming and autonomous vehicles and be more creative and willing to take chances with pilot projects and non-traditional projects in adjacent sectors. In other words, do we need to broaden our horizons and think more creatively about digital services? Graham, fresh from the great telco debate, I'd like to pop that first question over to you.
That's a big question, actually, and it's got lots of different parts in it. But look, I think the digital landscape's changing really, really quickly. The minute you think you understand it, it changes again, and then you don't understand it. But I do think that there are emerging areas that are very interesting in regards to the development of digital services, and sometimes they're kind of closer to home for DSPs than you might imagine. I'm just thinking about one example in our group. We've got a company called CK Delta inside the Hutchison group, which essentially takes anonymized information from mobile users, their location, and their tracking over time, analyzes that, and then packages that up to a bunch of different enterprises, be it retail operations, be it utilities companies looking to find out where they should be, putting in electric vehicle charging points and so on. So it doesn't always have to be very grand endeavors. Actually, we don't need to launch a whole new TV station or build a base on Mars or anything. Sometimes the most interesting and sometimes very profitable things you could do are quite close to home.
Thanks, Graham. Neil, building a base on Mars sounds quite appealing at this moment in time, but perhaps we should indeed be looking at less grand schemes.
I think we've tried that and not really been sensible about it. Listen, let's look at history, right? Back 15 years ago, before I worked at BT had a Netflix platform that would run over the public telephone network that we just weren't bold enough to launch it. WhatsApp, created by a couple of guys in their bedroom, that is effectively a telco service. And my challenge really to the industry, because I love this industry, I think we've done amazing things, is how do we be much more bolder about the services that we offer to customers and spend a little bit less time, just a little bit, a little bit less focused on the plumbing. In telco, we are geniuses at replumbing stuff. 2G, 3G, 4G, SDH, Sonnet, IP, pack over optical. We are leading plumbers, but actually our customers, sadly, most of them don't care about that. And what our customers are looking for, because our sector is highly trusted, our customers are really looking for us to help them in their digital lives, help them manage their digital security, help them manage their digital identity, help us to help the society in healthcare, in transportation, in sustainable energy. That's what our customers really want us telco, us operators to get into, because they trust us, they know that we can manage scale, and they know that we can add a huge amount of value, leveraging the network, leveraging data and AI, leveraging sensors and control plane, which we've got a hugely positive track record of. So I think we need to be bolder, and I think we need to think about how do we redirect investment to perhaps invest a little bit less in plumbing and more in services that our customers really care about.
Thanks, Neil. Bejoy, telcos indeed get a lot of data across their networks. These networks are incredibly sophisticated. You would have thought that there is a vast opportunity for digital services. Do we need to broaden our horizons then and look at a wider range of services to offer?
I would say so, because if you look at the revenue projections beyond core telecom services as a percentage of total revenue and year-over-year growth, at least the projections that we have seen is there's an expectation of 35 to 40% improvement in growth there. And this is outside of the core telco services operators, because when you look at 5G and beyond, there's a lot of industries that you could actually operate in, whether it's manufacturing or smart factories or retail. Now, the success here will only come if the operators can actually execute on a needed basis. So rather than competing on just who has the fastest network or biggest data plans, you need to look at a strategy where you replace the traditional streams, the revenue streams that they have, where they become a DSP and become an enablement platform like Neil mentioned earlier. BT's plans, if you'd actually taken it to the market where you're actually doing something like a Netflix, we collaborate and become a DSP, that's where the opportunity come in. Me as a consumer, I may want high quality video streamed to me only when I'm in a stadium and watching a game. I don't want a full monthly service. So those are kind of evolutions that as an operator you could do, becoming a DSP, which would then allow them to monetize beyond basic telecom services.
And Tim, do you think telcos need to broaden their approach to digital services, or is it more important to get them out as fast and as soon as they possibly can?
Well, I think Neil was absolutely right when he used the phrase, we need to be bolder. And I think that the nature of digital services, if there's one thing that's for sure, they're going to change over time. They're going to evolve. So I think trying to set up an environment to deliver X, Y, and Z digital services is going to be a very difficult thing to do. So I think the emphasis needs to be on agility. We need to be able to set ourselves up so that we can become far more market driven. We can respond to changing demands, changing requirements, changing customer requirements. So I think the key is not trying to second guess what the next wave of digital services will be, shifting maybe from the larger plays like mobile gaming to some of the more niche areas. The key is going to be having that agility to respond to a change in market dynamics.
And Sue, what do you think about this one? Do you feel that we need to support the telcos in making them more agile so they are more responsive and can act faster?
Absolutely. I think what we've got to do is move to more of a culture of experimentation. And certainly in the vendor community, we have to do a lot to help service providers do that. If you just think of what's changed over the last few years, we've now moved all the software to the cloud. It's not just cloud native, but putting it on public cloud. And if you want to start, looking at new types of services, partnering with different companies, you need to set that up quickly. So, you can't spend lots of time, transforming legacy things that might take, years. You've got to get up and running quickly. So moving to cloud platforms has been key to that. And, but even like new models, like SaaS models, being able to offer not your, regular way of doing it, but in a SaaS-based model, being able to offer, multi-tenancy. So all these kinds of things, I think we need to support so that, we can, build in, partners, build in partner management to these systems very quickly and be able to, just get out there and experiment with lots of different types of industries, whether it's in the core business, whether it's in the new verticals, a lot of things we can do to help move things faster.
And Rolf, if telcos are going to broaden their digital service offerings, they're going to have the networks and the systems in place that are agile and can support that and allow them to experiment, I guess.
Absolutely. If you want to be successful in the DSP area, we need to be able to respond to any crazy idea coming in from our customer base, because nobody is able to preempt everything. Hence, you need to have an underlying ecosystem which is flexible and adaptive enough so that we can actually respond in a reasonably fast manner to the asks which are coming in from it. And so things like automation, things like fast onboarding, things like fast adaptation are just essential tool sets so that the plumber, doesn't have to do all the plumbing by hand, but he might have, some equipment with him. Maybe a welder or a laser welder would be really cool. It definitely goes faster. And things like that, that's what we need to have in the ecosystem. And then on top of it, you need to have, next to the tool sets, you need to have the operational behavior, the governance, so that you can respond to it quickly. So you need to have an agile environment in your company, which allows you to respond to asks and react to it quickly without end levels of governance which need to be accepted for budget to be spoken, for example.
Thanks, Rolf. Now, Neil, you already mentioned a couple of very popular digital services provided by third parties there, which leads on to our next point made by our viewers, and that is that current service development processes are still hampered by slow, outdated processes, and that's a little bit harsh. But the fact is that not enough has been learned from what the FANG companies are doing. What do you think? Are there lessons to be learned from our global frenemies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Google rolls out something, they turn it on, and it's on everywhere in the world. In telco, we trial it in one city and then roll it out slowly. I think, we have to listen more to the customer and just watch how customers are behaving. Even throughout this pandemic, well, here in the UK, we're in lockdown again, but it's amazing how customers are still trying to develop things and build things. And in many cases, we're the bottleneck, but predominantly because most of the telcos in the world have been around pre-cloud native, and I think the hyperscalers have done a great job of getting their plumbing really right so that they can focus on the services, and we've got a lot to learn from them. Now, some people will say, well, why don't you just kind of get into bed with all of them? And I think if it was that easy, we would have done it. Our brand and most of the telco brand stands for trust. And I think we've got to be very careful and cautious about which partnerships we bring on board, who we work with, what data that we share, which is always a very challenging and concerning thing for customers, so that they feel that they still have that trust in the service provider and what the service provider is offering to them, both in connectivity services, but also in the over-the-top services. But let me tell you, I think in this space, we're often tarred with a past history brush. We've rolled out 5G in record speed here in the UK. BT and EE were number one in the UK for 5G. We're miles ahead of the competition, and we continue to push because our customers need this service, because our country needs this service. Openreach are going FTTP, 20,000 homes. It's a world record for FTTP build. And then I look at the services that we're building, and BT Global. We have an over-the-top complete Zoom orchestration where you can build Zoom out over your entire network in a matter of minutes. And we put all of those services together incredibly quickly. We launched Quilt, a new CDN that we run in BT, and through the pandemic, built out a huge amount of infrastructure that's delivering Disney Plus and other content. So, let's really look at how long things are taking us to deliver them. Let's really look at what the bottlenecks are. I hear a lot of yak about, well, it's finance and it's process and it's this. Listen, if you're focused about what the customer wants and there's value to be had, let me tell you, all those barriers disappear in any company, and especially in telco. And I think the point my colleague made earlier, look at the stock market prices for telco in Europe. It's not a pretty sight. We are headed to be a business that is very low in value, some great guaranteed returns, but over a long period of time. And we really need to think about how do we continue to offer the returns that our investors expect, because on telecoms connectivity services on their own, it ain't going to happen. We've got to do much more to be much more part of the digital lives of our customers. And the thing that's crazy about it is our customers really want us to do it. It's only us holding ourselves back.
Thank you, Neil. Well, let's see what some of our other guests think about lessons we can learn. Bejoy, can telcos apply lessons from the big global digital service providers, the so-called FANG companies?
Yeah, I would say based on Mavenir experience working with operator customers, things are changing rather rapidly. You're seeing a lot of innovation that's adopted from the IT side now being used in the telco side as well. There was discussion earlier about moving to a cloud native principles, so you could actually use some of these tools that are used by the hyperscalers, whether it's the CI/CD processes, the way you upgrade software, the way you become more automated using AI-based mechanisms. But at the same time, there are some challenges also with directly applying these development processes learned from FANG Brigade directly into the telco. And that has to go with the legacy of all the protocols that are currently there on the telco side, regulatory requirements, legal intercept requirements that operators have to adhere to. But at the same time, what I would say is typically what we've seen, the best DSPs have several common elements in being successful in this space. First among them is self-service capabilities. If you look at the digital dominant customer experience, whether it's through self-care chatbots, and finally, data-driven customer experience, how do you actually get to understanding the customer experience and truly giving them a digital self-service lifestyle.
Thank you. And Tim, what about you? What do you think are the lessons that telcos can learn from these global companies?
I think these global companies look at some of the key business processes in a very different way. So if you take, for example, assurance, the web scalers see assurance and fulfillment or delivery of the service and then the assurance of the service as two steps of the same process. It's more about managing that life cycle. Whereas historically, we've seen assurance and fulfillment as being two very discrete things. And that's been because of the infrastructure and the legacy of where we've come from. When your assurance engine saw that you weren't meeting your SLAs, it would trigger something for a manual intervention. But as we become increasingly automated, increasingly software defined, the remedy, when your assurance engine sees that you're not meeting your quality of service or your SLAs, the remedy, the fix to that, can be completely automated. You can automatically instruct your fulfillment engine to go fix that. So we can now look at fulfillment and assurance in the same way as the web scalers, as being two steps in the same process, not two discrete processes. But I think also conversely, I think the web scale companies can also learn a lot from our industry, from the telco industry. Standing up a 5 nines, highly resilient, highly scalable telco stack is a different proposition to standing up an IT stack. And I think that, the learning can be the other way as well, where we can share a lot around security, around resilience. So I think it's a two-way street.
Graham, is it maybe slightly unfair that we look to the hyperscalers as best practice in terms of digital services and try and get the telcos to mirror their approach?
No, I don't think it's unfair. I think that there's a huge amount to learn, and I'd agree with Neil that actually we've probably come much further along that path than most people give us credit for. But at the same time, in the world that I live in, where we're providing enterprise communications to critical national infrastructure, people don't want you to fail fast. They want it to just work first time, and they want to keep to you or exceed your SLAs, right? So there's no room for kind of experimentation at the customer's expense there, right? You really have to get it right first time. But having said that, if we look at our vendor partners, they've done a lot to accelerate the bringing in more cloud-based services for us to integrate into our offers and so on. So they've done a lot to speed up innovation in that particular space. So no, I don't think it's unfair. I think you're always looking to the best in the world. But we're slightly different to them. We are dealing a lot of the time with physical infrastructure in a place, be it a country or a port or an airport or whatever, and that does change the way you approach things for sure.
Yeah, and Rolf, we are different. Telecoms industry is different, but there must be lessons we can learn.
Well, if you look, compare the telecom industry with the big three. they have a global reach, and out of definition, telcos are national bodies with a few exceptions. And so reach does not exist as a restriction. And the second thing which I see is ecosystem. They have created excellent ecosystems, making it easy for customers to move in. And if we want to learn to be successful in what Neil was saying as being key, is really these two parts: making it easy to reach the end customer, make it easy to reach the developer.
And Sue, telcos are different to the hyperscalers, but we can still look towards them and take some best practices on board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we think of not necessarily the hyperscalers, but some of the other big digital companies, I mean, the digital ecosystems are very powerful. They know how to, bring on board partners, make it really easy. And I think, when we're talking about digital services going forward, it's got to include partner systems as well. And I think, being able to, put up these new services in a nice digital marketplace, being able to onboard those partners, but change them often, being able to do all the settlements that you need to do behind the scenes so that, you can change offers and put them in your catalog. I mean, all these things are going to be key to make it run easily. And then obviously allow enterprises to customize their own software, and be able to build their own applications on the telco platforms as well, whether they're based on the telco platforms, whether they're actually residing in some of the hyperscaler platforms. So I think that the whole notion of broadening out the digital ecosystems and that's something that's going to be really important to work with partners, not just the technology partners, but the service partners, and really bring them in, make it part of the overall service packaging, whether it's connectivity and other value-added services of the network with some really nice things that would sit on top.
Thank you. Well, this leads us into our next viewer question that we received. Bejoy, do telcos need to invest more in automation and AI if they are to truly accelerate speed to market? Now, this call's been made many times before, but is it actually happening?
Yeah, I would say today we see more than 50% of the operators actually investing in AI-based systems to improve the infrastructure. And this primarily, it could be the forward-looking CSPs, but we're seeing the need not just on greenfield deployment, but also on brownfield. And typically what we see is it's around 4 areas that they invest in. It's around network optimization that we talked about earlier, and just preventive maintenance. When you have outages, how do you quickly bring the network back up using automation, virtual assistants, and of course, the last is robotic process automation. You see some of the newer operators like Rakuten talk about, I can run the network of 10,000, 11,000 sites now using less than 200 employees. And you look at that in comparison to the number of employees that's there in some of the bigger telcos operating the same 11,000 sites. It could be multiples of order higher. And same thing, we were talking a lot about hyperscalers, the number of servers that are managed in a hyperscale environment. If you look at the ratio of this number of servers versus the number of system admins to manage those servers, it's multiple orders of magnitude higher because of the way automation and AI and tools are used within those environments. So there's a lot to learn there. And I'm sure that based on all the interactions that we have with operators, this is definitely AI ops is definitely a big area that all our customers are investing in. And from the vendor community, we're making sure as well that the products that we sell can actually integrate into these automation environments, can use these tools that are available for automation. So you have less touch points from humans, and it's more driven by intent-based networking or actual automation tools.
Thank you. And Rolf, we've been advocating automation for a long time and AI more recently. Do telcos need to do more, invest more in order to help them accelerate speed to market with new services? Or have they all got the message, you think, from your perspective, has the penny dropped? And are they indeed investing sufficiently in automation?
We need automation because if we want to build digital services, we need to construct them from a tool set of components. We need to consider services as if it were an object-oriented system where we take elements and we put them together, and it has to be completely not just automated, but it has to be machine readable in terms of the specifications so that the entire life cycle can be accelerated. So no discussion about that. In terms of investment, yes, definitely it's slowly happening. There is always a conflict where what I see is that some operators believe that low-level IT tools would be sufficient for it, but then they reach a limit where the complexity of operations, all the security measures, everything which you really need around it needs to be taken into account as well. And so I definitely do believe that the way the technology we're using in the telco industry is the right way to move forward to reach precisely this level of automation. On AI, yes, for sure. We have too much data to be able to understand it through our classic way with our brain. We need to have something a bit more efficient. And that's the only way forward. And proof points are enough around.
And Neil, I'm going to have to turn to you for this one. How are you doing with automation and AI?
Listen, in the UK, BT Group is the largest patent filler of AI. We are, at every corner of our business looking at AI to help us in our call centers, in our network operations centers, anywhere where we think AI can help us, we're trying to make it work. It's not easy. You've got to think slightly differently about, training this AI or working with this AI or developing this AI. And clearly, if you don't want to let loose an AI on the network that might, if you're not careful, do the wrong thing. So AI and automation is crucially important for us. And we look at AI and automation through the lens of how do we get the core infrastructure products like mobile, broadband, Ethernet, SD-WAN. How do we get those core products as zero touch, and in many of those core products today, broadband and mobile, they're zero touch already. Literally from press a button or swipe your credit card to deployment, the whole thing is automated, and we're using what I like to think about is observation. So where I think the hyperscalers have done a tremendous job that we can learn a huge amount from is in observation. They have got so much observation of what's happening with their customers, with their own platforms, out in the internet, and they tie all well together. And our approach, has been to build telemetry that gives us that visibility so that we can observe what's going on and deploy automation in a much more successful way. It's easy to automate the wrong things as well. We've learned that in some ways the hard way, where we've tried to automate something that actually, when you step back and look at it, you think, why are we doing that at all? So I think that, we're making great progress on that journey. In BT, we can't run the network without automation and AI now. If we turned it off, we literally would be in trouble. And it goes back to, we started looking at this problem back when we hosted the Olympics here in London. Usain Bolt takes 10 seconds to run the 100 meters, and we're running the network that everybody sees that on. Human interaction can't react or figure out what's happened in a network in 10 seconds, let alone fix it. So, we've been working on this problem for over 10 years. We've solved a lot of those issues. There's still more to do for sure, but in areas like where we've got, broadband customers in rural locations, where the length of our copper is very long, we're using AI to adjust parameters on that. In our mobile network, we're using AI in heavily dense spots to signal traffic. Now, once upon a time, that was really important. Interestingly, right now, it's not one of our top requirements in the mobile network today, but we're now using AI and automation to be able to cope with traffic surges as we see, our customers do big downloads for their latest video game. AI allows us to distribute that delivery across the network because it knows who's going to want that capability and that package, and it stores it in the places close to those customers so they get a great experience. Anyone thinking watching this that they don't need automation and AI, you're kidding yourself on, because even the smartest person in the world cannot cope with all the protocols, all the measures, all the capabilities in the network and in IT in general. That automation is very much here. It's very much here to stay. And frankly, as we move into the next generation of network services that are life and death, that are millisecond compliant, where millisecond compliance is required, you don't have a choice but to automate it. We humans are too slow, frankly.
Thank you, Neil. Well, unless any of our other guests have any other comments on automation, we really should press on because we've got a couple more points raised by our viewers. Let's get on to the next one. Graham, I'm going to ask you this one first. The only way telcos can hope to compete in digital services is to have in-depth expert knowledge of these areas. So they need to buy this in some way, start incubating new companies or accelerate startups. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, it's pretty fair, I guess. I mean, look, you would want to dive into new areas with no expertise. But I think that one thing I hope we've learned over the past sort of decade or so is that as well as acquiring that expertise for ourselves, partnerships are incredibly important, right? Building up an ecosystem of organizations that can help you deliver and understanding where you sit inside that ecosystem, who does what, and who's playing to their strengths inside that ecosystem is really, really important. So, yeah, I mean, look, we as plumbers, we know about plumbing, right? And so, when you want to move into a new area, you are going to have to bring a new expertise in or acquire that expertise. But I don't think in most areas that we'd want to do those things on our own. And I think forging the right partnerships is absolutely key.
Tim, a similar viewpoint from yourself. We do need to incubate companies and accelerate, but telcos could work with the wider ecosystem on this, couldn't they?
I think Graham's absolutely correct. I think if you look at the nature of digital services, they are so diverse. If you move from port authorities to logistics, for transport, for healthcare, for mobile gaming, it's going to be almost impossible to be an expert in all of those areas. And so I think Graham's absolutely right that this is going to drive a necessity for partnership. And I think that this is going to create a real ecosystem where service providers and over-the-top players can cooperate to create new differentiated services and take the assets and the expertise from the service provider and mash those together with the assets and the expertise from third-party companies to provide truly differentiated services.
Thanks. So yeah, Sue, getting the expertise to successfully launch and put out new services into market requires cooperation. It requires this ecosystem. It requires partnerships.
Oh, absolutely. So what I was saying earlier, I mean, you've got to understand the industry you're getting into. If you want to play in these vertical markets, they're all different. They're all, all the requirements are going to be different. We need to, not just the service providers, we obviously have to understand that. We have to understand how to build our software and how to be able to make it available in many different ways, whether it's, for example, on a charging basis. Today, we might charge for gigabytes. Going forward, we have to charge for everything, whether it's slices or number of sensors that are in a building. I mean, we don't know. So we have to have this knowledge. Service providers have to have this knowledge. You can either do that, you can acquire companies, but most obvious is through this ecosystem of partners. Choosing the right partners that, building the right software solutions for that industry, so that together you can bring the technology side, with these other areas. And, that's exactly what's happening. I mean, in Netcracker, our parent company, NEC, for example, I mean, their businesses in these different verticals, and recently they've been acquiring different companies, like in the finance market, for example, who do the banking software systems to really understand that technology and combine it with things like face recognition and all sorts of security applications, and bring these together to support that market. So having that combination, really building those partnerships with these expert companies is going to be key.
Bejoy, working with others, partnering, but I guess also this concept of co-developing with companies, and not just vertical sectors, but enterprises, other enterprises, you name it. It's a wide playing field because, as we've already discussed, there are a lot of digital services on offer here. It's very broad.
Yeah, so specifically on co-development, if we look at what the recent private network momentum there's been. But if you look at where the market is today, at least our studies working with Dell'Oro Media right now, is that the majority of initial deals that have happened, we've seen as the vendors are working directly with enterprises and CSPs, and the CSPs have just been relegated to being the connectivity provider. And if you look at the model where it's a CSP-led deal with the enterprise, that's relatively a very small minority. So the bottom line is that CSPs are already getting cut off from the strategic engagement. And for them to fully profit from this, that model has to change. And one way to change that is, of course, engaging in co-development exercises with enterprises, engaging the right teams, putting the architecture teams together that understand the business models on enterprise side, as well as the infrastructure and how telco networks work. Because as I'm sure everybody on the panel here understands, the knowledge gap between telco and enterprise are very varied, because it's probably harder for the telco, for the IT side to understand the telco requirements versus the vice versa. So having a joint team that can work together, understanding these business models, is going to help CSPs win new business as they enter into new verticals and sectors.
Thank you. And Rolf, what do you make of the idea of co-development with enterprises?
We do it quite a bit. We've seen it more with tier twos who want to bring in knowledge into their organization and slowly learn and take over ownership. The biggest benefit is that instead of having to write down specifications on your business operations, how you want to behave, you actually can, in trial and error fashion, do it yourself. So you take over ownership. Usually you get to be a bit faster. The biggest risk is the war on talent. It's not that we have unlimited engineering resources in the world, so you need to choose the right places to do co-development.
Thank you. And Neil, choose the right places to do co-development. It works, but we've got to make our choices.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We have to go where customers are. So there are some places where we can do that. We're building a brand new innovation center in Manchester over the next coming years, and trying to harness some of the talent that's coming out of universities in Manchester, as opposed to always building it in the south and the southeast. So absolutely, I think talent and the value of talent is still misunderstood, and actually it's an area where we as telcos have got to, if there's an area where we're behind, the telecommunication industry is behind understanding the value of its people and its technology experts. And telcos are, everyone, thinks that we're technology companies. We are, but it's all down to the people. And if you want to be working on new technology like AI, you've got to bring the best in. You've got to give them an environment where they can be successful. And the things that were maybe important to me when I started my career are very different to the things that are important to people joining BT through our grad programs or apprentice programs. I think you've got to have a very different mindset to how you grow and nurture that talent. But occasionally, and Cloud's a great example. You have to kind of bang on the CFO's door, get his checkbook out and write a big check and pay someone what they're worth. And too often we're just not good at that. We lose good people, or we lose good people that were part of our organizations, or we're unable to attract people in. And I think that's a great shame, because I think there are so many fantastic technical challenges inside telecommunications, and our requirement to build digital platforms that continue to drive people's lives and drive society and react to our customers' needs. So absolutely, skills are just crucial. And I can't emphasize how much more we need to do in that space.
Yeah, nicely said, Neil. Thank you very much. And with that, we do have to draw our discussion to a close. Thank you all very much for participating and sharing your views and opinions. And if you're watching this on day 5 of our DSP Leaders World Forum, the final day, then don't forget to send us any questions you have on this subject, and we will try and answer them in our live after show program later today. Otherwise, take a look at the sessions from this year's World Forum. They're all going to be available for on-demand viewing throughout the week. Today's been focused on DSP revenue streams, but we have covered 4 other important topics as part of this year's event. So please do keep watching and get in touch with us, because we really want to hear your views. For now though, Thank you for watching and goodbye.